Hey guys, Ken Smith Fishing. Rayburn report the week of the 11th of September 2019. So I'm not back down there yet. The BFL's coming up week after next. This weekend is the Outlaw Outdoors V&M Baits Tournament. I believe that tournament's on Sunday. So what we've got coming up is the V&M Baits Tournament, followed by the BFL, FLW BFL tournament. By the way, huge announcement yesterday from FLW. Didn't happen. Now I'm hearing it's going to be tomorrow. Who knows? There's so many rumors flying around. I've had a lot of fun messing with some of my buddies who fish that stuff. Nobody knows what's going to happen there. There may be an announcement by the time this video gets posted, but for now, no announcement. So next weekend, BFL 2-dayer on Rayburn. I think you can probably still enter. I'm sure they're not anywhere near full. Then we have the College Bassmasters Tournament. The regional, I think is what that one's called. So the College Bassmaster Regional Tournament that qualifies you to go to the National Championship, also put on by Outlaw Outdoors. I think that's everything in the really near term coming up. If there's something else, I'll post it down below. Don't forget the benefit tournament on Ray Hubbard at the end of October, and we'll talk more about that as we get closer to that tournament. So talking to the guys on Rayburn, the report really has not changed. No water's coming into the lake. We've not had any rain down there. The days continue to get shorter, but the water temperature's not cooled off out of the low 90s, early high 80s in the morning, low 90s. Still lots of schooling activity. Still really hard to catch any kind of quality fish. I'm dying to talk to Danny, and some other guys down there who are whacking on them to see if they'll share anything about what's going on. But for now, it's pretty closed mouth on the very few guys who are catching very many fish as exactly how they're doing that. But Rayburn stuff. So I do have a great story from Rayburn, and I appreciate Greg reaching out to me. So if you don't know, there's a guy named Greg Ostertag who you're seeing around on Rayburn quite a bit these days. And if you don't know Greg, he's pretty easy to spot because he's the only 7'2" guy that I know of bass fishing on Rayburn right now. He makes the Dowden boys look short. So Greg has played basketball. He's from I believe he's from the Metroplex here around Dallas originally. Boy, I apologize if that's not right, but I think that's right. Now I want to say DeSoto. Anyway, Greg then went on and played ball at Kansas, and then went and played a lot of years of professional basketball, and has turned into a pretty good fisherman down here, and really putting his time out on Rayburn, trying to get better. And so he sent me, he said, I got a fish story for you. So he sent me a picture of, hello Stella, of the fish that they caught this past week in the Labor Day weekend tournament. So let me show you these fish. Okay, so by the way, those fish look kind of small until you realize the guy holding them 7'2". So then he sends me a picture of some fish from a tournament around Labor Day last year, and he says, check this out. He says, you know, do you see anything? What jumps out at you? And I'm like, well, what looks like you wear the same clothes? I don't know. He goes, look closer at this fish. So look at this. So how crazy is this? I mean, there's a lot of ways a fish could have a mark on it. That tail is remarkable. I don't know that, I mean, that's obviously an injury. That's not from spawning. That fish, you know, had a cormorant or something, or an alligator get after it at one point and lost about half its tail. They caught that fish last year, drove almost 9 miles to the weigh-in, weighed that fish, and caught her again a year later, back up in the same, he said within 300 yards of where they caught her the year before, they caught her again. He said it's between 8 and 9 miles from where that fish was originally caught. That's crazy. That tells you those fish will go home. Those fish were released at the weigh-in site. They were released at Jackson Hill last year. This year fish was going to be released at Humphreys. So Greg, if you catch that fish again next year, man, that's even a better tail, but this is a pretty doggone good one. So that tells us that taking care of those fish, releasing them healthy, they'll go back where you caught them and give you a chance to catch them again. So they've cashed money off that same fish 2 different times now. I love that story. So I do have a little bit of Ken being a fishing geek to add to you today. Okay, cutaway. So before I go way into that particular bit about weighing different baits, I did discover something in playing with all this, and it was something I had always been curious about, and something I had no idea what the outcome was going to be before I tackled this. So I have always been concerned with the width of weights. Now, obviously there's a huge difference since we went from lead to tungsten weights, but when it comes to punching weights, big weights, 3/4, 1.5, and bigger weights, my concern always has been that the wider, the bigger around that bait is, the bigger the diameter, the more often that bait, so if that's that fish's mouth, the more often that bait's going to pop that fish's mouth open if that fish really doesn't have a hold of that bait. So I got my calipers out. I've got a really nice, accurate set of calipers. And I had, I think, 4 different types of tungsten laying around the house. And I did this little experiment right here. So I think this is interesting. And it's fractional differences, but what we do, those little tiny fractional differences could make a difference. I mean, they say golf is a game of inches. With us, I think it can be tiny pieces of inches because of the speed when I set the hook on a flip bait or on a punch bait and popping that fish's mouth open. So check this out. I thought this was pretty interesting. It's not a huge difference, but it's a little bit of difference. Okay, yeah, you can make fun of my workbench if you want to, but it's actually a dining room table I've taken over since the baby's been born. The other thing I was curious about is, to me, I want as small a diameter sinker as I can possibly get, because when I go to set the hook, if that's in a fish's mouth, it basically is acting as a shoehorn when it hit. If he doesn't have that bait or she doesn't have that bait clamped down, that's basically a form of a shoehorn. So I was curious if there was any variance, and there's not much. There's a tiny bit of variance. Got my calipers out. Okay, so the width of, that's a 3/4 ounce tungsten 6 cents. It's 10.58 millimeters. And by the way, just out of curiosity, the length of it is 18.62 millimeters. The Bass Pro Shops is slightly wider, 10.76 millimeters, and 18.23 millimeters long. And then the Strike King, and I'm going to get some more tungsten to do this with, guys, but the Strike King is 10.69 by 18.54. In my mind, ideally, I would like a bait half again that width and twice as long. Now, I know that creates other issues, specifically getting that bait to fall down through bushes and stuff, but I'm curious to see how much variance there is across a bunch of different types of tungsten. Let's go ahead, and since we've got them here, those were 3/4. I also happen to have a tungsten, a 1 ounce Strike King and a 1 ounce 6 cents. So the 1 ounce is 11.85. I hope you guys can read that. It's 11.87, 85. There we go, 11.85 millimeters wide and 19.95 millimeters length. 6 cents 1 ounces. 11.56 millimeters by 20.98. The 6 cents, you get a very, now again, it's almost imperceptible, but you get a very slightly skinnier sinker. Get that where you guys can see it. I think that's maybe in focus. Whoops. And just a tiny, tiny bit longer, excuse me, which is kind of what I'm looking for in this. I just realized I also have the XPS in the 1 ounce, so let's go ahead and get a measurement on them while we're here. The measurement on the XPS is 11.82 millimeters. That is the unpainted one, by 19.92 millimeters. Okay, so what we see there, and I'm going to put them on the screen somehow here, however I can figure out how to do this. The most narrow bait overall, sinker wise, is in fact the 6 cents baits. And guys, I'd have posted this whether that was the outcome or not. But the one thing I did think was interesting is sort of the bargain bait, or the bargain tungsten in that group, was the H2O stuff. And interesting to me, not only it's not the biggest around, but it's by far longer. I don't know how to do that math. I probably could figure it out. I could call Newberry and he could do it for me. But my suspicion is that's because that tungsten is less pure tungsten. There's other alloys in that tungsten. So the mass is bigger to get the same weight out of that tungsten. I don't know that to be true. If you know something about that, or if you can do that math, please post it in the comments below. But under the heading of are all tungsten created the same? No, I don't think they are. And truthfully, I would rather have, even if it's 2%, 4% smaller diameter tungsten for my flip baits, for my punch baits. I'd rather have that. It goes through easier, and I think you get a little better hookup ratio. And if it's one fish a year, but that fish is a 6-pounder or an 8-pounder, it's worth it to me. They all cost basically the same thing. So I am a committed 6 cents tungsten guy now, and I was doing it anyway because I like 6 cents and I use 6 cent stuff, but I kind of got some science around why I think it's maybe better tungsten now. So that's what it's worth. Now let's go back to the other bit of all the measuring and stuff that I did that I think you'll enjoy as well. Here we go. So in one of my videos, a guy said I was showing y'all that Quake, that 6 cents Quake suspending bait, which still isn't on the market yet. And I told you it's a 7/8 ounce bait. And after I sent that, Casey from 6 Cents sent me a message. He says, no, it's not. He says, those were prototype baits. We just stuck them in a box to send them down to you. So one of the guys in my video said to all those baits basically weigh the same thing. So I weighed them. And I think I've got video of it. If I do, I'll stick it in right here. But those baits weigh 0.6, so they're really 5/8 ounce baits. So it's, again, it's a big, heavy, easy bait to throw. So that got me thinking, I wonder how much variance there is across different baits. So obviously I went down to my local smoke shop, which I had never been in before, never been in a vape shop before, and bought some very accurate scales. Don't know why they sell those things, but bought some very accurate scales. And here's what I discovered. So weighing lots of different hard baits, I really thought there would be a variance. So what I'm going to show you right here is me weighing some big crankbaits. Okay, Strike King 10XD, advertised weight, it says nearly 2 ounces. That one is 190. Get everything on there. Well, we can get everything on there. Right at 2 ounces, 1.98. And 1.97 with the hook dangling off, so I'm going to assume those are dead on the same. Okay, same class bait, Cloud 25. They're so hard to get those big baits all on that scale at the same time. 1.98 ounce. 1.99. And then I could repeat this, so I weighed, so big crankbaits, here you see, the variance is very, very little. They all weigh basically pretty, now obviously if it says it's a 1 ounce bait and my scales weigh 0.98, that could just be my scales being off. All I was looking for was consistency in bait weights. And so I weighed Provoke jerk baits from 6 cents. I weighed Vision 110 crankbaits. I weighed Quake and Thud rattle baits from 6 cents. I weighed Strike King rattle baits. I weighed Yozuris. I weighed Lucky Crafts. I weighed rattle traps. And everybody's weights are pretty much dead on their advertised weight. Whatever their advertised weight is, that's what those baits weighed. I did the same thing on some Rapala crankbaits. I did it on just kind of everything I had here in Dallas and some stuff I had down at the lake as well. And I'll throw some of that in here as we're looking through this stuff. But what jumped out at me that really, really surprised me was the first spinnerbait I weighed was a 1/2 ounce War Eagle spinnerbait. And I weighed it, and a 1/2 ounce War Eagle spinnerbait does not weigh a 1/2 ounce. So here it is right here. So I reached out to War Eagle. I called them and I said, hey, what does a 1/2 ounce War Eagle spinnerbait weigh? And the guy said, well, it weighs a 1/2 ounce. And I said, no, it doesn't. Here's what it weighs. And he said, well, that can't be right. And I said, well, I weighed 5 of them, and they all weighed exactly the same thing. And he said, well, we're actually Predco when we bought them, so I don't know how there could be that discrepancy. And I said, well, do you think, and I hadn't weighed any other baits at that point, I said, do you think that when they weigh a spinnerbait, they weigh the bait as manufactured and shipped? Or do you think it's just the hook, the metal, and the head. And he said, I bet that's what it is. So I weighed a bunch of other spinnerbaits. Now, what I found is they all weigh quite a bit more, and they're all consistent. So if you weigh 6 half-ounce Stanley spinnerbaits or 6 half-ounce Strike King spinnerbaits, they all weigh consistently the same amount more than they're advertised if they have the same blade configuration. So what they're doing obviously is when they make a spinnerbait, if it's a half-ounce or if it's a 3/4 ounce, that is just the hook, the lead head, and the metal wire. That's all it is. And the only reason I think this is of interest to me is, so again, I weighed, I think, 4. Sorry, had to take a break for a cough there. I weighed 4 brands of spinnerbaits. I weighed Strike King, War Eagle, Booyah, and Advantage. I think that's the 4 I weighed. And every one of them was the same way. But if you're co-angling or fishing with your team partner and he's catching them on a half-ounce spinnerbait, and you dig in your box and get another brand half-ounce spinnerbait, there may be a reason he's catching them when you're not. Just saying, just FYI. So just something to keep in mind. And we've all had that happen where a guy's catching them really good off the front of his boat, or standing next to you, and you're throwing what you think is a pretty identical bait, maybe a different maker, and not catching them. It may be the fact that you're at a different point in the water column. Now, you also have to pay attention to their reel ratio, how fast they're working their bait, how much line is on their reel, what line they're throwing. All those factors also have an impact on the depth that that bait's running, right? But if you're matching their cadence and everything else is the same, and they're throwing a Strike King and you're throwing a War Eagle, there may be a pretty good difference in the depth that bait's running. I just thought that was interesting. Again, I'm a little bit of a fishing geek, so I hope you found that interesting too. The last thing I want to leave you with is a question to you guys. So as I went through this process of weighing this baits, one of the things I discovered was I don't have good solutions for storing baits. So that's a rattle bait box, and it's got a lot of rattle baits. That works fine. But when you start trying to get, for example, this is one of the things I struggled with, big crankbaits in one of these boxes. That box is full, and that box holds 5, maybe 10 or 12 baits. I don't like that. I also really don't like, so I've taken to carrying a lot of my big crankbaits in a box like that, but it becomes a mess once they come out of the box. Once you've used them and you just drop them back in there, you got kind of a mess in there. I do that now. So I like this style of box, and this is actually not a tackle box. This is a Sterlite. It's something I'm buying like at a Dollar General or somewhere. That's handy when you're just stowing baits in there when they're still new in the box. But man, once you start using them, kind of the same thing here. This is a type of box, same deal. It's got nice latches on it. This is where I carry spinnerbaits and buzzbaits. But once they're out of the package, I got no good place to store them. So now, and by the way, if all you're using is the stuff that I'm seeing at Academy and at Dick's and at Bass Pro Shops and at Walmart, I've tried all that stuff, okay? I've tried Plano, I've tried Flambeau. I've not found anything I like. Now, I'll admit an oddity about myself. I have not tried Bass Mafia stuff. Now, this is one of those weird things about me. So, for example, I cannot spend $100 on a pair of tennis shoes, on a pair of sneakers. I just can't do it, but I'll go spend $150 on dinner. I'll buy a nice bottle of wine. There's just some stuff it's really easy for me mentally to spend money on, and some stuff I don't. I'll spend $24 on a jackhammer chatterbait, on a $24 chatterbait, but I won't spend $50 on a box to carry it around in. I don't know. So maybe there's some Bass Mafia stuff. Maybe there's some other regional stuff that I've not heard of. I'd love to hear about it. I'd also love to hear, I know that somebody is now making those boxes that look like the Flambeau and the Plano boxes that have a sticky back to them. I'm curious if anybody's using those, if there's a weight differential, if that stuff gets mushy during the year, if you're liking those or not. I'd love to hear some feedback on that as well, because that's something I think is a cool idea, to hold those baits in place so they're not making so much noise and rattling around in the boat. But I'd like to know, and the other thing I'd like to know about those is whether or not you're getting rust issues in them when you put baits in there. I really hate getting rust in my boxes. So I'd love you guys' feedback on how you're storing. You know how I store my soft plastics in the zipper bags. If you don't know anything about that, I'm going to post a video. If you're on YouTube, you can see up there in the corner that eye. By the way, I'm patting Stella if you're wondering what I'm doing here. That eye will show you a very old video of mine where I think I still have the best solution for storing soft plastics, but I don't like most of my solutions for storing hard plastics. So I would love to hear either kind of other brands I've not heard of, regional stuff you guys have found, or just home remedies you guys have come up with, kind of like I did for the soft plastics to use to store your hard baits, and how you're doing that. So that's my report. That's my question to you guys. I appreciate your feedback. I'd love to hear it. If you've got a great idea, and you're okay with me sharing it, I'd love to hear it, and I'll try it and I'll share it as well. So you guys, let me know how you do this weekend on Rayburn, on Ray Hubbard, on wherever you're going. I know we've got the, give me that, Sammy. Don't carry a plastic bag around. I know we've got the Bass Champs Championship coming up in Texoma. Bodie got stepped on. Here in October, so I think we're about to go off limits. So I guess no more information sharing on that, but fall, hopefully it's about to cool off. Hopefully the fishing's about to get hopefully the fishing's about to get better, and we'll see you guys on the water in the next couple of weeks. Thanks, guys.